Thank you, Rachel. Distributorship, agency's first cousin. By way of introduction, we're familiar with agents. They take orders. They pass the orders to you, the brand owners. You supply the customers. You get paid. You pay the agents a commission. Classic way of operating. However, there is the alternative. The alternative is distributors. And it is an alternative because it's a different business model. It's a different way of working. The role of the distributor is to be out in the territory, selling, promoting, marketing your particular brand. Taking orders in from retailers, grouping those orders, passing those orders, or passing the grouped order up to you as the brand owner. You then supply the distributor supplies its customers. And it's that particular point which tells us that there is a difference between agency and distributorship. With agency, your customers are your customers. The role of the agent is to serve as an intermediary, a conduit, something that connects you with the customers, but there isn't a contractual relationship which the agent has with the customers. And that's despite the fact that many agents, when asked, will say, they're my customers. Well, they're my customers insofar as the agent perhaps knows that if he speaks nicely to Fred, he's likely to get a better order, for sure. That's about where it begins and where it ends. The customers are your customers. You carry the credit risk with those customers. You carry the risk that you're going to deliver products which are defective, or the wrong colourway, or the sizing ratios went out of the window. That's the risk with you. With distributorship, effectively you pass that degree of risk, and particularly the risk of not getting paid by customers, by the end retailer, you're passing that to the distributor. And it's important to bear in mind that distinction between the two, agency and distributorship. Without wishing to confuse things still further, there is arguably a halfway house. It's not that common here in the UK, it is far more common on the continent, and that's the commissionaire. And the commissionaire holds the stock, supplies the stock in response to orders, but doesn't actually take title, doesn't actually own the stock. But apart from that, very similar to agency. Interestingly from our perspective as lawyers, is the lack of any case law, the lack of any legislation, we would argue, because currently we're acting against the commissionaire, as to the status of the commissionaire. Is the commissionaire an agent coming within the commercial agents regulations, about which Emma and Rachel have spoken, or is the commissionaire a distributor, somewhere in between the two? The other fascinating thing about distributorship is the lack of legislation in this country which is specific to distributors. Oh, for sure, we've had proposals, and we still have proposals from the European Commission that they will legislate, that they will introduce into the EU legislation which is pretty similar to that for agents, in other words, designed to protect distributors. And this will be EU-wide legislation. It's been threatened for at least the last 10 years. At the moment, it actually hasn't seen the light of day in terms of coming in anywhere near into effect. But what we've also seen, and we're going to come on to a bit later on, is the development, however, of case law. So we've got legislation, that's one set of law. We've got case law, that's another set of law. And the two will come together from time to time in different areas of the law. But with case law, what we have seen is, certainly in this country, far more in mainland Europe, the judges look to find ways to extend the protection given to agents to distributors. And for lawyers to see that happen, and forgive me if I begin to sound too passionate about it, but for lawyers to see that happen actually is exciting for us, because we can be seeing the fact that the law develops. From your perspective as brand owners, it is a complete pain in the butt. It really is, because you do not need it. You've got enough things to think about when you're deciding whether to have an agent or a distributor. To know that the distributor may cause you trouble at some point in the future is more than you need. But it's something which is worth bearing in mind. So what to include in a distributorship agreement? Okay, let's run through a few things. Emma, when she was talking about appointing an agent or entering into the agency agreement, spoke about grants, spoke about the scope of the agency. It is not that different, or so different, when we're talking about distributors. Again, distributorship, agency's first cousin. So you can have the distributor appointed on an exclusive basis, or you can have the distributor appointed on a sole basis, or you can have the distributor appointed on a non-exclusive basis. And you can do this by reference to a territory. You're my distributor for France. Emma is my distributor for Sweden. Whatever that happens to be. But you can also do it by reference to product lines. You can also do it by reference to specific customers. There's nothing which says at the outset that when you appoint a distributor, that distributor must be exclusive for the whole territory, for all the customers, for all your product lines. Nothing at all. It's up to you to choose what you put into your distributorship agreement. Duration. Think about the distributor. Think about how the distributor will look at the relationship. If the distributor is going to be promoting your brand, selling your brand in a particular territory where you've not entered that particular market previously, the distributor is going to want a sufficient period to get a return on investment for devoting time, effort, cash usually, part of the showroom, to promoting your particular brand in that territory. To be in a situation where the agreement is too short, you've gone for a fixed term of 18 months, yes, we've all seen them, but that is too short. You're not giving the distributor the opportunity to get a return on investment. So what's the alternative? Do we say, right, the agreement will be for a fixed term of 5 years and thereafter it will continue? Well, thereafter it will continue, what does that mean? To lawyers it means it will continue thereafter for a reasonable period of time, but can be terminated by giving reasonable notice. Think about what you're putting into your agreement. More particularly, think about whether it suits your brand. If you think that the market for France is going to be the market for your brand to be in, and you're going to say, right, well, we'll have a distributor for 5 years, we'll see how it goes, and then you decide to get rid of the distributor, that's fine. But then are you saying goodbye to France? Are you going to service it yourself from the UK? It will take time to find another distributor. Think ahead. It's a bit like playing chess. Think a few moves ahead as to what is important for you and what may be important for you in the future, and provide a degree of flexibility. The distributor's obligations. The distributor's obligations are, in their own way, not dissimilar, which is lawyer speak for saying they're pretty similar, not dissimilar to those of an agent. You're looking for the distributor to attend the shows. You're looking for the distributor to use his best endeavours to promote the brand. You're looking for the distributor to provide you with information as to how your brand is performing in the marketplace, what competitors are doing. You're looking to the distributor to feed back to you customer comment, customer complaint, even though that particular issue is dealt with first and foremost by the distributor. Think about minimum purchase requirements, a first cousin in themselves to minimum sale requirements, which the agency or the agent will face. Intellectual property, I put on the screen offensive and defensive. By offensive, I don't mean that you go out and offend someone. On the contrary, what you're looking for there, so far as the distributor is concerned, is for the distributor to inform you if a third party is misusing your intellectual property rights, is infringing your intellectual property rights. At which point in time, depending upon what you put into your distributorship agreement, you will have a choice. Do you say, well, let the distributor get on with it? You could do, possibly cheaper in the short term, probably more expensive in the long term. Why? because you're letting your distributor take control of what happens to that infringement in that territory with your brand. Unless you have got a desire to allow other people to decide what happens to your brand without reference to you, fine. Defensive. Defensive is when a third party comes along and says, your brand is infringing their design. Your brand is infringing their trademark. By putting your brand onto the market, you have, because this is the term which is used in mainland Europe, you have engaged in unfair competition. We would call it passing off. You're seeking to take advantage of someone else's goodwill. Again, are you going to allow the distributor then to defend that action without your involvement? Or are you going to take control of that defence? To my mind, and I start from a position that I'm passionate about brands, you take control. Yes, it will probably cost you more in terms of legal fees. Yes, it will probably cost you more in terms of management time, and definitely it will cost you more in terms of stress. But it's your brand. And it's up to you to determine what happens. Worst thing in the world? Worst thing in the world is that you end up fighting one infringement action, whether it's offensive, defensive, it doesn't really matter, that you've allowed your distributor to do in, shall we say, France. And you're fighting another infringement action, again, it doesn't matter, offensive, defensive, which you've allowed your distributor to do in, shall we say, Korea. And the two parties that are being fought in France and Korea happen to be the same. They've got coordination, they know what's happening, they know what's doing, they know that the left hand is speaking to the right hand. Meanwhile, your two distributors who you've allowed to do it don't even know the other exists half the time, and certainly will not coordinate. And then you find yourself in a situation where the guy in Korea has reached a settlement and the guy in France is still fighting and has got the Korean settlement hanging over him, or vice versa. It's probably at that time that the lawyers do get a call, which is generally too late. Because as lawyers love cure. We earn a lot more money out of cure. You should always be thinking in terms of prevention. Okay, events of termination, consequences of termination. I will actually take in the second part, or second talk that I'm going to give a bit later on. But before I leave this slide, governing law and jurisdiction. Absolutely critical, absolutely critical. Do not get them confused. One is the law that will govern the terms of the contract, how the contract is interpreted, whether there will be implied into the contract certain provisions by law. Generally speaking, you will be looking to have your agreement expressly stated to be governed by the laws of England, or the laws of England and Wales, or I think we've got someone here from Scotland, the laws of Scotland, although you may take a different view after, I think, 14th of September, but let's not go there. Or even the laws of Northern Ireland. To put yourself as a British brand under the laws of France, under the laws of Spain, under the laws of South Korea, it's not good. Because you're needing to effectively concede control. Your British brand, things that you do, should be governed by your laws so far as it is possible to do so. And do not get laws and jurisdiction confused. Jurisdiction is what we call, jurisdiction is what we call which courts will determine the disputes. Or perhaps not courts, you may provide arbitration, that's absolutely fine. But essentially, which forum is going to determine the dispute? Now, some of you may have a burning wish to spend at least 6 years arguing a particular case before the Italian courts. We've done it. We've been involved. We've got the scars. We can show you the T-shirts later. You don't need it. Insofar as you can, unless there is a particular requirement under local law, and some countries will require this. To go back to agency, it is the case that Spanish law requires agency agreements to be determined insofar as there is a dispute in the Spanish courts. That is a requirement of Spanish law. But insofar as you can require it in respect of your distributorship agreements as well as your agency agreements, as was mentioned earlier, provide for the English courts, if you wish, the Scots courts or the courts in Northern Ireland to have jurisdiction. Anything else? Okay, very briefly, terms and conditions of sale, and I know that UKFT have got a very good talk in a few weeks, perhaps a couple of months, on the subject of terms and conditions of sale. Get your terms and conditions of sale correct. We are currently acting for a very well-known luxury brand. One of their customers went bust. We are now having discussions with the provisional liquidator about our client's retention of title, which we did not draft, just in case you were asking. They had terms and conditions, but they were little better than terms and conditions written on one side of a fact packet. Not good. Get your terms and conditions correct, but also bear in mind that the distributorship agreement is in effect an umbrella agreement. It is rare for the distributorship agreement actually to set out what is specifically going to be bought by the distributor and sold by you as the brand owner. For some industries, perhaps, yes, it can provide that, but for the fashion industry, it's almost unheard of. So you're going to have terms and conditions, but you're going to have terms and conditions sitting alongside the agreements that are made between you and the distributor each season for the sale of your particular season's collection. And it's going to be, hopefully, a whole series of agreements hanging under the umbrella agreement of the distributorship agreement. And to be in a situation, here comes the punchline, to be in a situation where you put something into your distributorship agreement which conflicts with the terms in your terms and conditions of sale is simply going to end up creating work for us. We like that. You have the opportunity to stop us doing it and stop us liking it by getting it right the first time. And frustration, and on this I will end and hand back to Emma, who will deal with the subject which will probably leave you even more frustrated. Frustration, it is a growing issue. It's a growing issue in terms of the contract coming to an end. It's a growing issue because when we're talking about, as we mostly are in this room, about overseas sales, regrettably, the world is becoming a more conflict-ridden place. We have seen earlier this week the announcement of sanctions by the EU, by the United States, in respect of what is going on in Southeast Europe. We are likely to see more of that rather than less of that. That's my view. Clients often say to us, the contract's been frustrated. Well, actually, it hasn't been frustrated. What has happened is that the other side, in this case the distributor, has taken advantage of the particular sanctions and said, well, we can't get our money out of the Bank Moscow Narodny. Well, perhaps they can, perhaps they can't, but that's what they're telling you. Or you get to a situation where you decide you're a founder distributor and the distributor is the one who is going to be the one for you. And the distributor is sitting there with a nice showroom in the centre of Moscow. It's waiting for the sample collection to be delivered, and then we hit a brick wall because we can't actually get the products into market. Yeah, it is an extreme example, but it can happen. At which point, do not rely on frustration. As a matter of English law, contracts are very rarely frustrated. Look to put into your agreement something which deals with force majeure. Much better, and be very careful, however, what you put in and what you don't put in, because you will end up finding yourself in difficult situations if you get it wrong.